right, everybody, welcome in. Happy Saturday to you. I am hopefully live with you. Let me know in the comments if you're with me live. You know, unfortunately, we have a little bit of a situation that continues to escalate here. And I'm not one to try to be alarmist or, you know, try to make things seem way worse than they are. In fact, I think right now people are very much so downplaying what's happening. And I've actually, for almost probably 2 weeks now, have been saying, hey, what's happening here with people not really reacting to what's going on feels a lot like what happened in 2020. And as time goes on, this is looking even more and more like 2020 in ways that I wasn't necessarily expecting or predicting in any way. So today, I'm just going to chat with you guys for a little bit, do a quick update on what's happening with the war, um, why what's happening with this oil situation is a little bit of a bigger deal than what people are making of it, what I've been doing about it a little bit, um, what countries are starting to do and how they're already starting to, in a way, shut down. They're already starting to have miniature versions of lockdowns, and why I think that could lead to lockdowns happening in other places as well, potentially all over. And yeah, just some of the things I'm doing to prepare for all of that, and then we'll talk any questions and Q&A. Before we get too deep into today's conversation, I do want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor, who is Caleb and Brown. And Caleb and Brown is a crypto brokerage that I partnered up with in these live streams. And the thing that I like about Caleb and Brown, the reason that I'm willing to talk about Caleb and Brown with you guys at all, is because they have specific brokers that you get to talk to when you're thinking about making any decisions when it comes to buying or selling your crypto. So Caleb Brown is a centralized exchange. It's a great place to have as a venue for another reason being that not only can you speak to someone in case you have questions, but also because they have no withdrawal limits. So if you need to withdraw crypto at any point, because for instance, things are going to the upside and you want to get things off of the platform, they have no limits on that. And most exchanges have limits. And especially when things start going crazy, you want to make sure you have as many venues as you possibly can. So if you're interested in buying crypto, selling crypto, learning more about how it all works, check out Caleb and Brown at the first link in the description of this video. And also know that I have a contact there. His name is Jim. And Jim, his email is also in the description of this video. So if you ever have any direct questions, just go ahead, reach out to Jim. He'll take care of you. Say, hey, I'm coming from Keith D. I wanted to learn more about this platform. I have some questions about crypto, things like that. And he'll set up a call with you and you guys can talk about the platform and how to get involved. So that's Caleb and Brown. I will get back to what's going on here in this war efforts now. Let's talk about this because we've got just an interesting past 24 hours regarding all of this. So most recently, Trump basically said yesterday, he said, we're getting very close to meeting our objectives as we consider winding down our great military efforts in the Middle East. So there's like all these timelines that are coming up because throughout the day he said, oh, we're done with the war. Oh, we're going to wind it down. Oh, we're thinking about doing more and doing less or whatever, right? Stick with me here. I'm going to do this update on what's happening with the war. It's all going to make sense in just a second. All right. Um, as to why it is exactly that we might be looking at lockdowns coming here. And everyone's confused. Like, what are you talking about? Lockdowns, this, lockdowns, that. What are you talking about? Well, it's actually very much so today, especially everyone's talking about this because the International Energy Agency has come out and basically given some recommendations that feel a lot like lockdowns. And the International Energy Agency is, well, essentially one of the top intergovernmental organizations regarding what's happening in the world of energy all over the world, a huge coalition of all of these different governments and organizations coming together to set data about what's happening, as well as um, making recommendations for things like this. So we'll get into that in just a second, but it also we've got to understand what's happening in the war to really make sense of this. So let me just go ahead for anybody who isn't super familiar with what's going on, right? We've got the fact that there's been a war that has started in the Middle East. You have Iran, who's on the east side of the Persian Gulf, and you have all of the countries on the west side of the Persian Gulf called the Gulf Coast countries. Think about Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Bahrain, Kuwait, uh, Qatar, all of them, right, that are over there. A huge portion of the world's oil supply. Now, the Strait of Hormuz, right, the strait that everyone's trying to come in and out of, which is 20% of the world's oil and gas, okay? 20% of the world's oil comes through the strait. 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, which is used for electricity, is coming out of the strait. You've got Iran saying no one can get through the strait, potentially laying mines, all kinds of stuff. We don't really know exactly what's going on, okay? But just imagine they've completely cut off the strait. They've said we'll allow certain people to come through, and they've even threatened to say, oh, well, if you use Chinese yuan, we'll let you through. And we'll talk about the most recent move that they've made there as well. And essentially, this situation, after they've blocked the Strait of Hormuz, has only continued to get worse. Not only have they blocked the Strait of Hormuz, but you also have a destruction of the actual oil facilities in the entire region. Okay, Iran and their oil facilities getting bombed, them in response bombing Qatar liquefied natural gas fields, or gas fields. And not only is this a problem for gas and oil, but you also have the byproducts that come from oil and gas. Okay, things like helium are not going to be able to come out of the Strait of Hormuz, and and there's a large amount of helium that's coming out of there as well. This is impacting like MRI machines. This impacts chip production to a massive degree. So just a little bit of a catch up, right? Because I think, like, once again, I've been trying to say over and over again, this situation is really, really, really big. And it doesn't seem like it's resonating. I told you guys last week, somebody was like, it's only 20% of the world's oil supply. 20% of the world's oil supply, guys. That's 20% of the world's movement, right? Imagine you can only move, as an example, we're about to see 20% less today. If you wanted to go out and drive, you need to drive 1/5 less today. And that's just imagining that it's just 1/5 less. You might actually have to drive 50% less today. Oh, but I got to go to work, bro. What do you mean? 50% less. That means that I can only make it to work. I wouldn't be able to make it back. Anyways, let me keep going. So Trump yesterday had a huge flip-flopping of his messaging. He was saying the war's over. It's not over. We're thinking about winding it down, whatever. Right. And so with all of that, we also had Bush having a message that came out not too long ago. A few years ago. And it sounds very similar to this most recent message that Trump made. So let me read this one more time real quick. Let me pull up the screen again. Let me see, how do I get this to actually properly share? Give me just a second. So let me read this piece off from Trump again. He says, we're getting very close to meeting our objectives as we consider down our great military efforts in the Middle East with respect to the terrorist regime of Iran, completely destroying their missile capacity, launchers, everything else pertaining to them, destroying their defense industrial base, eliminating their Navy and Air Force, never allowing them to get back to a nuclear capability ever again, and always being in the position where the USA can quickly and powerfully react to such a situation should it take place. Protecting the highest level of our Middle Eastern allies, And as we've seen, Trump has continuously been saying, oh, the war is over, we won, this and that and whatever. So let's see what happened when Bush said something very similar not too long ago. I thought this was a cool thing that someone brought up. This was at the beginning of the Iraq War, 6 weeks into the Iraq War. This was the message that President Bush had.
Thank you. Thank you all very much, Admiral Kelly, Captain Card, officers and sailors of the USS Abraham Lincoln, my fellow Americans. Major combat operations in Iraq have ended, In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed. Thank you.
So that war did not end at that point, right? This guy said, Martin Armstrong said it went on for 8 years, and Trump might have to do the same here. So, quick update. This guy, Dr. Jihoon Park here on Twitter, says that Iran just revealed its dead man switch. Attack Karg Island and the Houthis will shut down the Bab al-Mandab Strait. So the situation is this. You've got the Strait of Hormuz, and you've got this Bab al-Mandab Strait as well. Mandab Strait. And so with both of them, right, you're talking about an even larger percentage of global trade, right? A lot of oil and gas is coming out of the Middle East. Okay. Most of it coming through this strait, but another half of it coming through this strait. Okay. And the Houthis are, and from what I understand, an extension and a proxy of the Iranian forces that are out in Yemen. Okay. So they are saying we are going to block this strait if the U.S. tries to go and take Karg Island, which is the main export center over here in Iran. And there's rumors that the United States has been deploying ground troops to this region. Okay. So we're getting a ratcheting up of the situation. Okay. We've got Houthis potentially trying to get involved here, basically saying, if you go there, we'll go here. And then you're just going to have a continued escalation of the problem and even more of the world's oil in a situation. So we've got a couple of new members. I want to say thanks to you, Muna Wise 8981. Thank you for joining us. And then Kai Wessel, thank you for joining us as well on the channel members. We appreciate that. And so, yeah, in 2024, they started, the Houthis in the Red Sea were starting to attack ships. And apparently the U.S. spent some money trying to stop them from doing that. That didn't necessarily work. Ships were starting to reroute around Africa instead. So costs went up in that time. Now, if they shut the Bab al-Mandab Strait completely, then the Suez Canal becomes useless. So we heard about the Suez Canal back in 2020, right? Because there were 2021, when there was this massive a container ship that got stuck in the middle of it. And that disrupted global trade and caused some supply chain issues at the time. So here we are, 6 years later, we're looking at some parallels to the situation that we had. And things in the Middle East are not calming down. So let's talk about that really quickly here. We had Iran potentially launching a missile that did not hit, but that was apparently targeted at the Diego Garcia base. This is a U.S. and UK joint military base. Now, this is fascinating because essentially what this is saying, even if they didn't mean to actually hit the island, what they've basically said, what Iran has said is, hey, by the way, we can hit targets that are that far away. So here's the situation from what I'm seeing, guys. I'm not a war analyst. I'm also not out there. Let me tell you right now. But these are the things that we're seeing at the moment. This guy said Iran just fired a ballistic missile at a U.S. military base, a U.S. British military base that's 4,000 kilometers away, and no one's talking about it. So the Iran regime launched a ballistic missile at Diego Garcia, one of the most strategic and secret military bases on Earth. It's located on a remote island in the Indian Ocean. The Wall Street Journal confirmed the attack came after Britain allowed Washington to use the base for operations against Iran. He says, look, Diego Garcia is 4,000 kilometers away from Iranian territory. Radar systems around the Persian Gulf detected the launch. The missile was either shot down or malfunctioned mid-air. The Wall Street Journal called it a qualitative development, showing significant Iranian capability. Britain, in this case, right, if this is what's happening, is now a direct target for allowing U.S. operations from its military base. So there's two messages that are being sent here. One of them is that Iran might have the capabilities of sending a ballistic missile 4,000 kilometers away. Not only that, but also they're sending the message that if you are participating in helping the United States, you are a target, right? So Diego Garcia was supposed to be untouchable. So um, it was supposed to be so far away from the Middle East that it's considered to be a safe zone. Iran just proved that it's not. This guy is saying here, for example, 4,000 kilometers is the distance from New York to LA. Okay, so they're saying Iran can now reach targets potentially across an entire ocean. So the thing that I keep seeing about this that I find fascinating is to think that Iran is continuing to show that their military capabilities, right? They're basically showing further and further capabilities, right? They're ratcheting up what it is that they're capable of over time. They're like, oh, by the way, we can send something 4,000 kilometers away. Yeah, Cosmo Kramer, you just said lockdown, boy. I've got to stop clicking these clickbait or unsubscribe. So tired of these doom titles. Not just you, everyone. Pay attention to what I'm about to talk about and pay attention to what is going on because there are lockdowns already, right? So you need to lock in is what needs to happen because I'm not the one to be really trying to create extra fear. I don't do that, right? That's not my goal. I do my best to get your attention. And in this case, I actually do think it's appropriate to consider whether or not we in the US or in the West are going to have to deal with lockdowns because you're talking about, by the way, right now, you're talking about the potential for tens of millions of people in Africa to be dealing with famine because of the situation at hand. And this isn't me talking about this. This is the information that's coming from World Food Program, okay, from the United Nations. The International Energy Agency is telling people already to stay at home. So let me calm down, but let me continue this conversation because I know that you needed to hear that. So I'm talking to you for a second. But back to the program. So this right here is showing the potential range that Iran has with having a 4,000 kilometer radius. And now, mind you, this is just what's happening. Excuse me. That's what we know for a minimum, right, of what they're capable of. Now, if they keep on sending out missiles that go even further than the one that they just did, right, then who knows exactly how far their capabilities are as far as their missiles can go. So that's one other thing. The last thing here on this specific war piece is that Iran claims a direct missile hit on a nuclear site that I believe is in Israel. Now, this is like super developing. Okay, so we don't have any confirmations of this, but the IRGC claimed missile and drone strikes on U.S.-linked bases in UAE and Kuwait, excuse me, is where it is. So the problem with that is that it's not that they launched a nuclear weapon. It's that they're attacking a nuclear site. But attacking a nuclear site is a really big deal because when you do that, you're potentially, if you blow up a nuclear site, there's going to be nuclear waste that kind of gets put up into the air and spit out. It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of like chemical warfare in a sense if you're attacking a nuclear site. So something to keep in mind here as things continue to ratchet up. And all of this context is necessary to what I'm about to say about this potential for these lockdowns, because the thing that we have to keep track of is that if anyone in finance, we understand the concept, right, of a trend. Right? We're always trying to look at what are the trends. We talk about three different types of trends. We have tactical trends, which are short-term moves. We have cyclical trends, which are medium-term moves. Tactical could be a few days to a few weeks or whatever. Cyclical could be 1 to 2 years, maybe even 4 years at a time. And then we talk about secular trends, which are these like decade-long plus trends that are happening. The trend of this war, okay, right now, not directly related to those three timeframes, but the trend of this war right now is that things are heating up. It's not coming down, but the problems are already massive. The problems of what's happening in the Strait is already a huge deal. It already requires for us as individuals to do things to be prepared. Okay. So that's why I'm going over this, because once again, there's no clear off ramp at the moment, right? And things continue to get worse. So let me keep going. So there's this talks that Iran is charging $2 million per tanker to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. The Financial Times has reported one of these payments. The IRGC, the Financial Times reported the payment. The IRGC confirms it by radio. And this is Shanaka Pereira here. A huge shout out to him. I've been using a lot of his articles and whatnot in our analysis. So huge shout out to him, and would love to have you on the channel if you're up for it. So he's saying that the world's most important choke point has been converted from a military blockade to a toll road. I see we got a super chat. Kid 1201 said, I foresaw lockdowns, mass exodus, selective service fears, welfare dependency amid volatile markets, and apartment buildings becoming digital prisons with smart locks and controlled access. You know, trust me, guys, I don't want to see anything like that either, by the way. To be clear, I don't want to see the world get like that. That's not what I want. But let me just keep moving. So Shanaka Pereira said the mechanism is precise. A tanker operator contracts the intermediaries. The intermediaries negotiate with the IRGC. A fee is agreed, reportedly up to $2 million per voyage to come through the strait. The payment is made in cash, crypto, or barter. The vessel receives clearance. The IRGC hails a tanker on VHF radio, verifies its transponder data, and grants passage. The tanker transits, it arrives. So he says roughly 89 to 90 vessels, including 16 oil tankers, have successfully transited between March 1st and 15 under some form of an IRGC clearance, according to Lloyd's List Intelligence. Not all of them paid. Some were Iranian or allied ships. Some were Indian tankers that received diplomatic safe passage after government-to-government negotiations. Some were shadow fleet operators running dark with transponders off. But the Financial Times report confirms that at least one tanker operator paid the toll explicitly. The commercial precedent for that now exists. So just imagine, right? You've got all of this happening. And now, in the middle of all of this, we've talked about this before, there's a potential that once they started saying, oh, you can come through here if you pay in yuan, there's a chance here that this conversation is starting to move toward how crypto and blockchain technology can be used to reorder the global order. So just something to keep in mind here as this continues to develop. $2 million per tanker, right? That's going to be something that's that empowers the regime as well, right? So if they're able to get through, if they're able to actually pay $2 million, any ship can pay to get through, that's going to be a massive problem. We've been in the chat. Appreciate you, Ben. Yeah, come in here and like. I've noticed you guys don't like my streams. If you like the stream, like the stream. You know, let YouTube know that you liked it as well. So yeah, when you come in here, guys, definitely always feel free to hit that like button. It helps a ton with discoverability. And what we're talking about today is pretty important, I think. And I can tell because you guys are showing up as well. So let's listen to this really quickly because we actually had a couple of officials, guys, you know, don't listen to me. Listen to what other people are saying about what's coming next for oil. And so U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright had to answer to a reporter about whether or not Americans should be prepared for oil to hit $200, which, by the way, is what the Iranian regime has said is their goal. They've said that their goal is to get oil up to $200 a barrel. Is that what's happening? Let's hear what Chris Wright has to say about that.
Friday, and the price of a barrel of oil closed above $103 on Friday, and the Iranians are warning of prices hitting $200 a barrel. Mr. Secretary, should Americans be bracing for, should they be worried that this war will actually drive the price of oil above $200 a barrel?
So Iran for 47 years has called the United States the Great Satan. So because they call us the Great Satan, I don't think we are the Great Satan. In fact, clearly we're not. So I don't listen much to Iranian projections of what's going to happen.
So that's a no?
There is disruptions of flow in a very important waterway. I would pay no attention to what Iran says, but there is a lot of energy that flows through the Straits of Hormuz. And depending upon the timing and the manner in which this conflict comes to an end, we're going to see some elevated pricing until we get there. Where it's going to go, we have done many, many actions to mitigate that price rise.
So the poster here, Onuka said, reporter says, should Americans be prepared for $200 oil? And then Secretary Wright says, did you know they call us the Great Satan? So he did, you know, eventually kind of give a little bit of an answer to the question, at least saying that, you know, that people should not listen to the Iranian regime. But I find it fascinating that a lot of these officials have clearly taken a class on how to not answer a question and how to deflect. And, you know, listen, I don't care about politics, right? But I do care about communication, deception and being able to come up with the right information as it comes across my screen. And that right there was a clear masterclass in how to try to divert attention. And you see it constantly happening to where at this point, it actually doesn't seem very effective. So that's what the Energy Secretary Wright has been saying. We also have the United Airlines CEO saying that they're going to cut flights as they eye oil getting above $100 through 2027. Okay. So the CEO of the company said that they've cut 5 percentage points of planned capacity in 2026. They've warned that oil could rise as high as $175 a barrel. And he says that United's annual fuel bill could rise by $11 billion. Okay. So now this is the CEO of United Airlines. Okay. This is a private actor. This is someone who's in the private sector who doesn't have too much of a reason to come out and say that he thinks that oil prices are going to rise supermassively. I guess technically it would justify having higher flight prices. Let's be clear. But, right, does he want to see the demand destruction that's going to come from that? Probably not. Right. So let's move forward. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Sung Hoon Lee, another person that we follow pretty closely here on the page, he kind of breaks this down a little bit further, right? Oil projected to $175 a barrel, won't return to $100 a barrel until late 2027. Now, this is from the words of the United Airlines CEO himself, right? This is a report that he put out saying that this is what he's seeing. Now, for context, oil was $68 a barrel in September 2024. We're at a 157% increase. The last time oil was near $175 was 2008, right before the global economy collapsed. They're showing you headlines about minor schedule adjustments. They're not showing you that America's biggest airline is gaming in economic catastrophe. So basically, this is what he's preparing for. He's not saying that this is what's going to happen. Okay, he's saying that he's preparing, right, for the worst case scenario of oil getting up to $175 a barrel. Okay. Now, with that being said, let's dive in a little bit deeper on what the real problem is here, because it can be a little bit difficult to really, really see. And I see we got a super chat I'll quickly address. We have, you are deep into Ethereum. What are my thoughts on Ethereum? My thoughts on Ethereum aren't too different than my thoughts on the rest of crypto right now. Risk assets are going to be going through a tougher time at this moment. But we're going to talk about why also crypto might be the most important thing to at least have exposure to in this moment. There's a ton of people who just don't own any crypto or who don't have crypto and think it's dumb and it's crazy. And we got to talk about why we got to at least question that narrative and try to really think a little bit harder about what comes next here. But first, let's dive into this quick video.
They aren't prepared for how bad this is going to get. Just to clear, right? You have to clear the market when there is that much of a supply-demand imbalance. And the other issue that we have is when you have a 20 million barrel per day demand shock, print 5 trillion. That's what they did, right? They just printed 5 trillion. When you have a 20 million barrel per day supply shock, you can't print molecules. As Jeff Curry has been trying to tell people, you can't print oil, you can't print molecules. And a lot of these refineries that are being hit, there was a headline earlier today that the largest natural gas field in the world, that Qatar and Iran share, is going offline, and it might take 5 years. There might be force majeure for 5 years. You can print 5 trillion in a day, in an afternoon, right? Airdrop that to a bunch of people, boom, you resolved it. But when you have a 20 million barrel per day supply shock, and a lot of those, a lot of that, the oil and the capacity to produce more is kind of taken offline for at least a couple months, if not a couple years, I think that things could get like really bad. And it seems like the only people that are worried are the commodity guys. Seems they all understand kind of what we're walking into. And the equity guys are just like, yeah, buy Mag 7 and sell consumer staples.
Arch is the world's leading.
So let me talk about this with you guys real quick, because I think there's an opportunity to chat about this real quick. When it comes to thinking about what happened in 2020 and comparing it a little bit to what's happening right now, there are some things to consider, right? So what we saw in 2020 was a massive demand shock, a massive negative demand shock. People were first forced to stay home. First, you can't go anywhere. And when that happens, you've now taken the demand way down, right? Demand for oil, demand for transportation, demand for everything, right? At that point, when the demand for oil goes down, prices for everything, right? Demand for everything is kind of coming down. And so, okay, so there's not as much economic activity going on. You've got this demand shock because people first aren't going out, they're not spending money, they're not going anywhere. And so there's less money coming around in circulation. So what can you do to improve a demand shock, a negative demand shock situation? You can give people money, right? Because a lot of people can't work in that time either, right? So there's just not only is there not money flowing, there's no money that people have. People don't have money. So what they do, they gave people money, print money, literal handouts to people to try to improve the demand shock, the negative demand shock. So now you artificially stripped all the demand out of the economy, and then you hand them money, print money, create debt to go and hand it back to them so that they can spend again. Now, when you have that, once again, that negative demand shock, but supply stays the same, then you have a massive drop in price levels. Oil in that situation went negative. I don't know if you missed that, but there was a moment where oil went negative. Okay, let me just go ahead and actually pull it up for you guys because this is an important thing to try to illustrate. So oil goes negative in 2020 because of this massive pullback in demand. And at that moment, right, wow, this is such an incredible thing to actually see on the charts. So oil at that time, this is the crude oil futures. Okay, so this was February 2020, March 2020, and then bang, April 2020 comes around. And you get oil coming all the way down to negative $24 a barrel. Okay, so essentially, you're getting paid to buy oil, essentially, not literally, but just imagine that, right? That's what happens when you have a massive, incredible demand shock. Now, what happened after that? Well, there's only one place for something to go after it goes negative, right? It's going to go up. All right. And I want to kind of really point this out because this also has implications for thinking about investing. Okay. I know a lot of us here are looking for, hey, well, what do I do about this kind of stuff, right? In that moment, right? Let's come back to 2020 real quick. This is ExxonMobil. Price went down to as low as $30 a share for ExxonMobil at that time, after having been up at over $80 a share, and in 2016 at $95 a share. Okay, bang, huge fall off. It had a little bit of a rally up to $50 in the middle of 2020, and then came all the way back down in October to $30. And then after that, you have a generational run, right, for Exxon. If you're thinking to yourself, well, if demand has gone to zero, then it could probably only go up from here. Then you're going to have an incredible opportunity, right, to buy in this area as this is happening. Okay. And then what happens from there? You see the price of Exxon go up to $120 a share. And then here we are today at $159 a share. Okay. Now, just saying, right, just thinking about how do things progress through history? How do we look at these demand and supply shocks? What does that look like? Right. So let me continue. So that's when you have a negative demand shock, an artificial negative demand shock like that. Now, let's think about, well, let me say, you can fix that problem by printing money, by handing money to people, and then now they have money that they can go out and spend in the economy. Now, what happened was during this time, a lot of supply chains got constrained, right? So you took a lot of supply offline, a lot of factories stopped moving, things stopped happening in that time, and you have to say, oh, I might even have to shut down. A lot of businesses shut down in that time. So then when demand came back, you had the opposite problem. You had a huge amount of demand, and then you had a supply of a constraint of the supply. You can't just put supply back online, right? Because you shut down factories because of this negative demand shock that you had. So now you've got a huge positive demand shock in a sense. You have excess demand, but not enough supply. So what happens? Prices go up. But in that situation, what happened was you couldn't just print supply. It takes years for factories and all this stuff to come back online. So slowly we saw that happen. And since 2021, for instance, right, prices have continued to go up. We've seen inflation almost this entire time. It's come down. Inflation has come down very slowly. Just go ahead and actually look at it, right? How inflation has played out throughout this time. And so point being, right? Point being here, we're gonna break this down how it's super relevant to today. So just give me a quick second. So CPI in 2022 got up to, this is on a monthly basis, up to 1.2%. And then it came down right after all of that. You had obviously the Fed doing their thing with interest rates, right? Trying to suppress this inflation by raising the rates, slowing down the growth and the investment in the economy. And now here we are, where rates have been elevated. We've started to try to pull them back down, right, to make sure that things don't get too bad and so we can still have some growth in the economy and things don't start turning into deflationary spirals. But here we are with inflation still kind of hitting at like 2-ish% on a yearly basis. I'm trying to find the year over year. Okay, this is much clearer what I'm trying to illustrate. 2022, you had inflation all the way up to, what is it, 9.1%. Okay. And then it came down gradually, slowly. And so here we are now where it's coming down, right? But all of that came from the fact that you had this massive supply constraint. That supply constraint led to massive inflation. You had demand, but you couldn't print supply. Supply takes time to bring online. So now let me bring it back. Okay. So positive demand shock, excess demand, not enough supply, but you can't print the supply. So prices go up. A negative demand shock, which is what happened at the beginning of 2020. You have an excess supply, not enough demand, but you can print money to create demand. Now let's talk about on the supply side. If you have a positive supply shock, which is a weird thing to think about, I'm not sure what would create a positive supply shock. I don't know if that's a real thing. I guess maybe if you made a discovery of a new technology that would allow you to find something would be the way that you would get that, right? Like, or a new technology that would allow you, for instance, to mine gold at like a 10 times more efficient rate, right? Then that would be a supply shock. Essentially, you could create a supply shock through that. And in that case, you have an excess supply, but not enough demand. And in that case, price would fall. Now, you could give people money in that situation to try to get more demand. So there's a way to fix that problem. But now we've got the concept of what's happening right now, where you have a negative supply shock. Okay. You've got physical infrastructure being struck by missiles. You've got a physical strait that's being blocked and being told that if you go through, you will get hit with a missile. Okay, so you've got now an insufficient supply with the same amount of demand. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have a price that rises. You're going to have a structural rise in the price. We're not talking about a Tuesday, the price went up kind of a thing. We're talking about 5 years of the fact that force majeure has to happen in a Qatari oil field or gas field, whichever one it was. 5 years, they're saying they're going to call force majeure. It's going to take them 5 years to get back to that same level of capacity. And that's just one facility that got hit. We're talking about an entire region that's responsible for the world's energy trade that's just up in flames. And it's only getting worse, is my whole point. Now, let's move into this conversation because governments and organizations around the world are responding to this. Okay, this isn't, as we've been saying, this is not a small thing. This is going to cause issues, and governments are starting to respond. Georgia in the United States becomes the first state to suspend fuel taxes as the Middle East war since gas prices soaring. That's, close to home for some people. That's a state in the United States. In Spain, you have a temporary freeze of the rents due to the war in the Middle East. You have the International Energy Agency. We'll talk about this a little bit more in depth in just a minute. Calling for people to cut oil demand by working from home more, flying less, and driving slower as the Iran war rocks global energy markets. This is the International Energy Agency recommending this to everybody. That's not to talk about what we're seeing in Thailand, That's not to talk about what we're seeing in Vietnam, okay, where they're already telling people to work from home before the International Energy Agency even said that. So Simon Dixon, incredible analyst and someone who talks about a lot of this stuff on a higher level. He's deep into the Bitcoin crypto space. He's deep into what's happening with he breaks down this beautiful piece about the military industrial complex, the financial industrial complex, and the technology industrial complex. And we're going to talk about Simon Dixon on Memes in Markets probably next week. So if you haven't already, definitely be sure to go and subscribe to Memes in Markets. We go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern, and we have incredible conversations. You can find the link to that in the description of this video. Go and subscribe over there. We have some incredible conversations. Thursday, we had Andy Schechtman on. Okay, Andy Schechtman, huge gold analyst, and has a company called Miles Franklin where he sells precious metals as well. And we had this incredible conversation about what's happening right now, whether or not it has been intentional, the destruction of the US dollar, and so on and so forth. So we've had some great guests. We've had also Clive Thompson we've had over there. We've had Nicole Purvey. Shout out to her. I'm going to be on her show next week. And we discuss a lot of what's happening in the crypto space, but also what's happening around the world. We did an episode just talking about Professor Zhang, all of that. So be sure to check that out at the link in the description. Now, Simon Dixon, who we're going to talk about next week and who I'd love to collaborate with, so definitely come on over here as well, put out a piece talking about this, right? He says, wow, the International Energy Agency is recommending lockdowns, easing the world to individual carbon credits as an exit ramp. You will own nothing and be happy, he says. So here's the exact recommendations that the International Energy Agency has made, and this is on their website right now. It says work from home where possible. Reduce highway speed limits by at least 10 kilometers an hour. Encourage public transit. Alternate private car access to roads in large cities on different days. Number plate rotation schemes can reduce congestion and fuel-intensive driving. This is something that already happens in other places. I spent some time in Sao Paulo a couple years ago, and I realized that they do that there as well. You can only drive certain amounts of days out of the week. And if your license plate, you have a certain like number or letter on your license plate that says which days of the week you're allowed to drive. Something that already happens in other parts of the world. Once again, the West tends to get so just be unaware of the types of things that other people have to do, right? That we are not susceptible to. But then these things, they come to us, they hit us, right? Over time. So let's keep it going. They said increase car sharing and adopt energy efficient driving practices. They said efficient driving for road commercial vehicles and delivery of goods. They said divert your LPG use from transport. Shifting biofuel and converted vehicles from LPG to gasoline can preserve LPG for cooking and other essential needs. Okay, hold on. Liquefied petroleum gas. Okay, I was like, I don't know what that is. Avoid air travel where alternative options exist. Where possible, switch to other modern cooking solutions, encouraging electric cooking. Modern options can reduce reliance on liquefied petroleum gas. And finally, they said leverage flexibility with petrochemical feedstocks and implement short-term efficiency and maintenance measures. Now, there's a few things, right, that are coming up in my head the more that I read this, right? Oof, yeah, that idea, you'll own nothing and be happy. There's the eating bugs thing that came up not too long ago during that same time from the World Economic Forum, basically saying people are going to eat bugs. There's the lab-made meat situation. Okay, and this is something that's absolutely cooking in my head because guess what? We're having shortages in fertilizer, okay, which is going to basically force some substitutions to be made. Like I said, in Africa, you're talking about tens of millions of people that might be dealing with famine, depending upon how much longer this problem with the Strait of Hormuz continues on. So you're already seeing farmers starting to choose between which crops they're going to plant. Okay, so we talked about in the channel members section, we've talked a little bit more in depth about what this looks like. Corn versus soybeans, and potentially soybeans having to be planted instead of corn, but corn is used to feed chickens and other livestock. So if you can't feed the livestock, guess what you don't have? You don't have livestock either. Okay, so you're going to have to start to find alternative sources of food. Now, listen, I'm just getting out ahead of this narrative. I'm not saying this is what has to happen. But I will go ahead and put it out there because we've already been told about the lab-made meat. We've already been told about all of these different things that are going to be solutions to these types of problems as we continue to have them. Now, I haven't done any research on lab-made meat because to me, I would like to ignore that and hope that that's something that is not what's happening. But, just saying. Just saying, we've already seen them start to drop the hints around this kind of stuff. Now, let's hear Simon Dixon's oral take from an episode that he just did with Peter McCormack of what he's kind of saying about the situation. Now, I'm gonna play this clip here, so stick with me. This is a very, very interesting piece here, and I really think that we have to listen to what he's saying. And by the way, guys, I've been talking about this, and this came out yesterday, so maybe we're crazy, but maybe also it's a matter of trying to see what's happening. And really, Simon Dixon has informed a lot of my opinion and a lot of the things that I'm talking about here today. So let's tune into what he had to say. Also, see we have a super chat from L00 Tourer. Have you read the article from the ITIF about China overshadowing the U.S. in critical technology? Came out in 2025. Also, learn to enjoy tofu. I love it. I have not seen that, so I will look into that. But let's go ahead and dive into this piece here with Simon.
You can tell this is fake because right now, if this was real, not only would you have an increase in the price of oil, but gold would be soaring as well. Gold's not soaring right now. Gold's been flat, if not down, while oil was rising. That means the insiders in the market know that there's a time frame on this war and it's not a forever war. If this was going to blow up the Middle East, gold would be going through the roof and oil would be going through the roof in sync. It's not. So there's going to be an offboard and everyone needs a three-way narrative. Israel needs to say, we did the decapitation campaigns, we chopped off the head of the snake. Meanwhile, it's burdened with debt and it's got less military, all degraded. The Gulf countries will renegotiate those contracts with some American, some China, most Russia and China. In terms of those bases probably won't be rebuilt for American interest. America's now an energy exporter. It gets Europe, it gets Central and South America. And then what did the Gulf countries do in their retaliation? They said, we're reconsidering our investments in the US. Trump said, we've got 18 trillion investment, 18 trillion. Foreign direct investment means you're acquiring the assets of America so you can leverage America. And so they said, we're going to rethink those. What were those, the ones they're going to rethink? Those were mainly defense and artificial intelligence. That's what all the investment was. They said, we're going to rethink it. That creates a problem with the AI trade in America. You get a correction of the market. You get the private credit market blowing up.
What's the timescale on all this?
Exactly. What is happening in April? In April is the China summit, which is a meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping. It will be done by April, is my prediction.
April.
Yeah. So in that meeting will be the official you'll probably need a theatrical. You'll need a Hollywood movie from Trump. Trump needs a Hollywood movie. So he will probably do something similar to the 12-Day War, where he had Operation Midnight Hammer. He came in with the B-52 bomber, America looking like the king of the world, comes along, strategically takes out some of the highly enriched uranium. If you remember, the Bitcoin mining crashed by like 25% when that happened. And then you get the theater, you get the movie, and we retreated. We took out Khamenei. He'll have his narrative of MAGA. MAGA will be happy because they're like, yeah, you're not the neocon. You're not doing the forever war. You're not doing Afghanistan. You're not doing Iraq. You're not doing that anymore. Israel will have, we decapitated. Netanyahu will be regime change this year. He'll be gone. It will be, a GCC and Turkey aligned puppet government in Israel that's no longer funded by US military. Okay. And Iran will be fully online with China's plan. I guarantee you in the next few years, there will be gas pipelines between the Gulf countries and Iran. Iran won't have sanctions. And Iran will open up its economy to, and probably what they're negotiating over now is the FIC probably in a new multipolar world wants some private corporate interest in the Strait of Hormuz so that IRGC don't have full autonomy to close it again. And they'll try and get some strategic ports. BlackRock will end up with some kind of deal from that. And we'll end up where the massive amount of money that can be made from deals in Iran, deals in Syria, deals in Lebanon, deals in the Gulf countries, deals across Saudi. It will be the highest growth opportunity in the world. And they will sit between a falling US empire, which is increasingly vassalized, and a rising China that's building out Africa. And why do they need Africa? It's the only one that's still having children right now. They need the birth rates. So you put everyone else in an AI, robotics, and police state, so you can deal with all the civil unrest that comes from it. So if you are now losing your primary source of profit, which was war in the Middle East, you need civil unrest within Europe, but not where it affects the stock market, just where it extracts wealth and extracts more resources. But we can't have absolute chaos. So we need Palantir. We need a police and surveillance state. We need digital ID. We need central bank digital currencies. What else did happen? Taiwan, this is interesting. What happened during this war? They said in order to preserve energy, because not Taiwan, Thailand, sorry. In order to preserve energy, everyone needs to stay at home, work from home. The pandemic narrative ain't going to work again. So now they've created another one. In order to preserve energy costs, please everyone stay at home. We need to save energy while we deal with this crisis.
So Simon Dixon, once again, guys, I constantly watching what he has to say. He's got a very unique perspective and has spent time in the United Kingdom in the financial sector. So he has these really unique takes on basically how he believes the world actually works. So check out Peter McCormack. He's had Simon Dixon on several different times. And yesterday they put out this really cool episode. I highly recommend watching the full version of that. But in general here, right? The thing is that there have been a few different trends that we've seen continuing to develop. One of them being this increase in the use of artificial intelligence technology and the excuses for potentially why this could be used at a very high level with no restraints at all whatsoever have been continued civil unrest in the United States in particular. Now we're seeing it all over, but definitely in the United States. We know for a fact the United States government is very much so tied in with Palantir, with Anduril, with all of these large data companies. We know that the United States has passed the Genius Act in the past year and are working closely with stablecoins right now, really trying to do everything in its power to get the stablecoin legislation across the finish line and now the Clarity Act across the finish line, where a lot of the carve-outs in the language of all of this allow for these stablecoins and digital currencies that are not CBDCs, clearly not CBDCs, to be used in a way that the Treasury still will have some access to what they agree to what can be done and not done with this stuff. But let me just move forward. My point being, increases of having high prices for everything is going to lead to problems in the streets at some point, right? People are going to have to figure out what they're going to do for themselves. So no. Stay home. Everyone stay home. No gathering. Same thing we saw in 2020. Do not gather. Stay home. And as this is all going on, you've got new needs for, well, if I got to stay home, I can't work. My job doesn't work remote. How about that? Well, we've got another time. We basically what I'm looking at, guys, is 2020 kind of felt like a practice run. I remember during that time I was losing my mind because I'm like, wait a minute, like this might be that moment where everything changes. But now we might see that 2020 was a little bit of a practice run. How do people react when they're told that they need to stay home? Will they do it? People will do it. What is going to happen to society when they do that? How are people going to feel about getting these stimulus checks? Is that something that they're going to be into? And then what are they going to do with those stimulus checks when they receive them? We saw a lot of speculation happening with that. We saw a lot of people buying assets. We saw people buying crypto. We saw a huge stimulus in financial markets that came when that money came out into the people's hands. So just kind of pointing out some parallels because it looks like we might be moving into that direction. Let me play you a quick clip from a leader at the International Energy Agency talking about the situation that's at hand.
It is much bigger than what we had in the 1970s, the oil price shocks. It is also bigger than the natural gas price shock we have experienced after the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And it is not only oil and gas, fertilizers, petrochemicals. These are all facing major problems.
It could change again, but in the space of just 3 weeks, this war has posed challenges to the fortunes of businesses, households and governments that no one was prepared for. Darshini David, BBC News.
Quick, wanted to address a super chat. The solution ODAAT. Your insight is well thought and presented in digestible nuggets. The gold and silver trade will resume after forced selling. Fed's printers are running, he says. Totally heard on that, my man. Appreciate your super chat. I really do appreciate that. Thanks, guys. So, just, I'm trying to give you guys a little bit more from the source, what this is looking like, right? So that is the International Energy Agency head dropping the fact that this is a much bigger energy crisis than what happened in the 1970s. Now, I wasn't around for that, but as I talked about in today's video, right, when you had the oil embargo, you had crazy amounts of inflation that happened in Japan in that time. We haven't even talked about the Japanese yen reverse carry trade, but we'll talk about what all this stuff means for the markets in just a little bit. But let's keep going because I want you guys to see that this stuff is happening. Restaurants all over India have started to close their doors, and in many cities, people have had to join long queues to get gas cylinders that they use to heat food. This is coming from The Economist. This guy, Rami Al-Hashimi, says that the biggest lockdown since 2020 is coming, and they're not going to warn you until it's too late. This is not about the war. This is about what the war is doing to your life. Here's a domino chain that nobody's talking about. He says oil goes to 110, 150, 175. Airlines start cutting flights. United just cut 5% this week. Their CEO is planning for $175 oil. Trucking costs explode. Every product in the gas store is expensive. Fertilizer stops moving through the Strait of Hormuz. Farmers pay more. Food costs more. Gas goes to $5, $6, $7 a gallon. Then the government starts telling you to drive less. Japan is already rationing fuel. South Korea is already rationing fuel. Bangladesh, Philippines, all rationing fuel. Australia's government is telling people to avoid non-essential journeys. That is exactly what they said to do in 2020. Avoid non-essential travel, work from home, only go out for essential purposes. They called it a health measure in 2020. Now it's going to be an energy measure in 2026. The result is the same. You do not leave your house without permission, and they will never call it a, quote, lockdown. But in reality, I think it might be called that. It might be very, there's no easy way to get around this, right? So once again, I saw someone in the comments also pointing this out. We're talking about energy infrastructure getting destroyed. We're not talking about just the strait being closed. Even if you open the strait, there's going to be an issue.
Mutually assured energy destruction. This is what Israel had in mind when they struck the South Pars energy field in Iran. They have thus reacted in bombing the largest LNG export facility in the world in Qatar, which is now heavily damaged. They also struck Saudi Arabia, UAE energy infrastructure. This energy infrastructure in the Middle East, it is stationary. Everyone knows where it is. It is hard to defend. And if Iran gets hit, they're lashing out and they're striking these other energy infrastructure. It's kind of a smart play by Israel because it's going to bring in all these neighbors. Qatar's already expelled all the Iranian officials. And I think if this continues, you will see other countries be involved in strikes against Iran, which a lot of them don't. But if they keep getting attacked, they're going to have no choice. So this isn't ending anytime soon. And Trump just lashed out at Israel over this. He's freaking out because obviously oil is a global commodity and prices are going to go up everywhere. If you look at the state of the economy right now, the middle class is eviscerated. The lower rungs, everyone's struggling. Everyone's maxing out credit cards already. Food prices, grocery prices, everything is already sky high. And we double the price of oil. What does that look like globally? With food prices and grocery prices doubling from where they're at. No politician's going to survive this. Politicians everywhere are going to get ousted. People are going to be so disenfranchised and unhappy. You're going to have a global upswell of revolution and civil unrest in the world as prices go parabolic. Right now, like supplies, everything takes a couple weeks to play out. In about 4 weeks from now, when the existing supplies get used and the new prices are coming in on everything, Oil is an input in every product everywhere, tourism, plastics, you name it. It's going to cause inflation like you've never seen before. So I think this inflation is going to pop the everything bubble just like it did in 2008, and it's going to bring everything back to reality. So buckle up, because we're going to have a COVID 2.0 where it's going to be stay at home, don't drive to work. No one's going to have any, energy for anything. And you're already seeing it in places like Thailand and these other countries where they're already rationing oil. Obviously, the U.S. has reserves, but they can only last a couple of weeks if we get completely cut off. So it's going to be interesting times, and it's going to be a good time to own Bitcoin.
So this guy, Bitcoin Capitalist, he's been talking about this quite a bit. I believe he was actually in Dubai as all of this began. So he's been kind of keeping everyone updated as he's been going through that situation. So he was talking about before how essentially, I think this actually might be the one. Yep.
The data center of Iran's largest bank has just been destroyed by U.S. forces. So what does that mean? That bank is responsible for all the IRGC soldiers, all their payments to all the government people. Their information is just obliterated. Maybe they got a backup somewhere, who knows? But it is going to be financial chaos in Iran. And this is just like another example of why Bitcoin is so important, because all these banks have centralized servers. The US is also very susceptible to this. I would not be surprised if we have massive cyber attacks against our stock exchanges and our banks, and it causes it not to work. And then it's like people can't make payments and everything stops. You know what doesn't stop is Bitcoin. It is decentralized. It's run on servers all over the world. You can blow up, one mining center. It's going to absolutely do nothing. So if they had Bitcoin integrated to their economy, the government of Iran owned Bitcoin, they could be paying all their soldiers and keeping the economy going. But pretty much the whole Iranian economy is going to go to zero. Like, all the oil refineries are getting blown up. We're just obliterating everything there. And unfortunately, some people were probably millionaires, upper middle class. They had real estate. Real estate's worthless. Your business is destroyed. Your bank doesn't exist. Your bank account doesn't exist anymore. Your currency was already inflating. Now it's probably hyperinflation or completely worthless. And this is why Bitcoin is the must-own asset, and conflict is going to go to other countries around the world. And the citizens are going to be collateral damage, and you got to own Bitcoin to protect yourself.
So this is the Bitcoin Capitalist 21. Shout out to him for the cool message that he's been continuing to bring, as once again, he was actually in, I believe, the Middle East as some of this broke out. And that's a lot of why he's saying, there were actual problems with the banking system. And he had a friend who actually had to use Bitcoin, for instance, to buy a flight out of the region. So, yeah, I know, guys, Bitcoin, cryptos, it's not necessarily the point here. The point being here is the shift in the needs from what it is that we need to be doing, how to protect ourselves in these types of times, right? Because this can happen anywhere, right? These types of issues, and there's different angles and ways in which and how this can happen. We're seeing digital infrastructure being targeted. We've seen the potential for fiber optic cables, for instance, to be targeted. There's a lot of different ways we have to think about what does the world look like as we're going through this type of a conflict, and what might it look like. So yeah, someone says no internet, no BTC. Very, very important thing to think about as well, right? Like, if the internet goes down, what are you going to do with the Bitcoin? Well, these are why you also can't just stop at the conversation around Bitcoin. You also have to think about what are the different networks that do have offline payment solutions, or that at least are being prepared for that. Okay. So anyways, just wanted to touch on that because I thought he had an interesting message there. Another piece here. You've got Laos has ordered schools nationwide to cut in-person classes from 5 to 3 days a week as part of emergency measures aimed at easing financial pressure on families amid continued fuel price volatility. So, right, like, imagine if you can't pay for gas, you can't get to school, and therefore you're kind of missing out on learning and education and all of that, right? Society starts to break down, right, when all of this happens. Society starts to break down when oil prices jump that way. So this guy, Rashid bin Said, gives a full breakdown of the different things that are happening around the world regarding this energy lockdown, is what the term that he's used. United States here so far, it's just gas prices are up, right? United Kingdom, government's telling people to avoid non-essential travel. Japan, fuel rationing already implemented. We're going to talk about Japan after this, and then we'll break down into the Q&A. South Korea, you've got fuel rationing active. You've got Bangladesh, fuel rationing, Philippines, energy rationing measures, Sri Lanka, petrol stretching for miles, flashback to the 2022 collapse that they had there. Australia's government insisting rationing won't happen, but also telling people to cut frivolous journeys at the same time. Germany facing gas prices potentially going from 29 euros to 500 euros. I don't know what that's about. Banks warning of industrial shutdowns. We'll see. We'll have to dig deeper into that throughout the week. Greece said fuel costs threatening shipping and tourism economy. In India, 80% of oil imports go through the Strait of Hormuz. Energy reserves activated. Pakistan already in fiscal crisis. Oil shock adding to near collapse conditions. Okay, so just letting everybody know, right? Because somebody once again came in and talking about the title, like, what are you doing? As he says, this is happening right now. Okay, and governments are calling it an energy measure. So just want to let it be clear, guys. I'm not here trying to stir a problem. I'm really not, but I have been trying to do my best to make sure that people are prepared as this situation continues, because people are just not simply taking it seriously enough. Now, moving forward, we have, let's talk about what this means for the markets and what to do about it. So first of all, I will continue to say that we've seen a reaction from gold. Okay, gold has not been reacting very well to all of this. It took a massive pullback. We're talking about like I think like 20% pullback from the $5,000 mark. Huge retracement in the price of gold. Let me go ahead and pull this up from top to now. Yeah, 20% overall retracement in the price of gold. Let me pull this up. This is the GC contract, the gold futures contract, down about 20% from the highs of $5,600, which is wild to say out loud. And now it's all the way down to 4,400. So with this being said, right, could gold continue to go lower? It absolutely can. I would say this $4,000 mark would be a really powerful place to see where you react in that high $3,000 to $4,000 range. But does this mean that the top for gold is in? I think there's an argument to be made around that. And we actually talked with Andy Schechtman once again on live on Memes and Markets, where we went live on Thursday to talk to him about it. And he had a very interesting take. Now, he also has his position is right. He sells gold. So we always have to keep these things as, hey, that's what he does. But he's also been selling gold, right? He's been selling gold for a very long time. And so the idea being, if this is kind of just a retracement and then this continues to go on, then that's what we could see. And this is just that. This is just a retracement. I've been talking about this for quite some time, right? I've been saying, guys, yes, gold is up right now. Be careful. Going to pull back. It will pull back on what I believe is this secular trend in gold, where I do also believe that gold can come down. Gold and silver can come down. But once it's done with this retracement, I will not be surprised by the price continuing to rise. Never take financial advice from a random guy talking to a stick or a random guy talking to a wall. But none of this is financial advice. Just want to make that clear. So silver futures, same type of a concept going on there. What's happening with Bitcoin? We had like a little bit of a push up in the price of Bitcoin. People were freaking out like, oh, Bitcoin's going up. Listen, Bitcoin is going to suffer from the same problem that the rest of all of these risk assets are going to suffer from. And we're going to break down one of the biggest things that we talked about today on the channel regarding Japan and why it's something that we're going to keep an eye on. The thing about Bitcoin, the thing about crypto in general, is that in these times, we also have to think about it from a little bit of a different perspective. Because yes, it's going to go down, but it can also have utility in terms of when other things start to freeze up. Okay, so really Bitcoin is not just like an asset that moves up and down. You kind of have to also think about it in the same way that some people might look at gold and silver. It's like, this is a digital form of gold and silver in that it exists outside of the traditional financial system. So if the bank has an issue, then my crypto isn't necessarily going to have an issue. I'm still going to be able to send it back and forth, so able to use it. Now, I'm not preparing for straight up pure doomsday types of scenarios, but at the same time, we want to be prepared for any scenario. So it's always never this, never that. And it's like, guys, we don't want to live in that kind of a world as someone who's trying to protect themselves. You want to protect yourselves for best case, worst case, in the field of probabilities, the cones of probability, right? Now, let's keep moving forward. So the situation in Japan is this. Japan imports around 80% of its oil from the Middle East. Japan only has a certain amount of oil that they have in reserves. They have about 250 days of oil still in reserves. On the liquefied natural gas front, they don't get as much of the liquefied natural gas from the Middle East, but they only have 2 to 4 weeks of reserves of the liquefied natural gas. And so with that being understood, Japan is about to go through a little bit of an issue here. They came over to the United States. They were talking with Trump, Trump was trying to get them to provide naval assets to help the region, to help clear the Strait of Hormuz. But in reality, we really don't know that anyone can really help with that situation. Right? There's a very precarious situation there where just because you send naval ships through doesn't mean that you're going to be able to protect other ships. Battleships aren't designed to be an escort. They're designed to protect themselves and or to make an attack. Right. So it's just an equation where even if they provide that help, is it really going to make a difference? Maybe, maybe not. Now, let's move forward. Japan has been dealing with a major economic problem. They can't grow their economy. They've done everything in their nature to be able to do it. They've taken their interest rates to negative rates for like a decade in the early 2000s, essentially. And that finally got them to where they could get a little bit of growth in their economy, a little bit of inflation peaking up. And then now they're starting to raise their interest rates. But now when interest rates were low, hit that like button. Yeah, somebody just say 888. There's 2,400 people in here. Hit that like button, please. If you're getting anything from this at all whatsoever, hit that like button and also subscribe because I know there's some new people here as well. So with interest rates in Japan that have been rising massively, their currency continuing to weaken as well. Let me back up. So when Japan had negative interest rates for like almost an entire decade, if not more than that, people were borrowing in yen. They borrow that yen, they go out and they buy assets so that they can essentially just make anything more than the rate that they're borrowing at. Anything more, if I'm borrowing at 1% and I can just invest in the US treasuries at 3%, well, then that's free money. I'm just going to borrow as much money as I can and buy as much treasuries as I can because that's basically a risk-free asset. There's no risk that I'm taking. I'm going to get that 3% unless the US government just disappears, right? So I'll borrow that money in yen at 1%, buy these US treasuries at 3%, but I'm also going to take some other risk too. Like, I mean, free money at 1% rates. I'm going to go out and buy some stocks too. Why not? I can make 8% on that money. So let me get that 8%. And then I'm going to take that, right? The difference between what I'm making over here, this 3% of that 8%. And then my real return, right? Because I got to pay 1% is either 7% or 2%. Let's just imagine, right? So now the problem starts to come in when the Bank of Japan starts to raise their interest rates. So the Bank of Japan starts raising interest rates and like, wait a minute, I've got investments over here that are at 3%. So now if the interest rate over here is going to be 2%, then I'm only making 1%. And now the risk that I'm taking to make this trade is like not really worth it. I'm only making 1% to borrow this money. I probably shouldn't even be borrowing this money. So what am I going to do? I'm going to sell whatever I bought over there, and I'm going to take that money. I'm going to pay my loans back to make sure that the interest rates don't get too out of hand to where I end up losing money on the trade. And so we've seen, everyone understands this at this point, right? The Japanese yen reverse carry trade is what I'm describing here. So what happens is you start to unwind the borrowing. You start to sell off these assets. Now, the thing is a lot of these assets were bought in the United States. A lot of U.S. stock market, a lot of the U.S. bond market has been bought with all this money that's been borrowed in yen. We're talking about a lot of money. And Japan happens to be the largest foreign holder, one of the largest foreign holders of U.S. debt. With about $1 trillion in U.S. debt, they hold $1 trillion of U.S. bonds. Some of that money might have been borrowed in yen. So let's just imagine, right? You've got the entire United States bond market caught up in this situation. And what's happening here is that now the oil situation in Japan is going to hit them first, okay? Because they're basically the most reliant on the Strait of Hormuz for oil and liquefied natural gas. So now let's imagine that all of a sudden, just like what happened in the 1970s for them, this was a big problem. You saw 20% inflation, 20+% inflation in Japan during that time. Okay. At that point, you get 20% plus inflation. Oh my goodness. What does the Bank of Japan have to do in a situation like that? Let's imagine that once again, we get high inflation like that because of the price of oil going through the roof. Well, the Bank of Japan just had a rate decision this week and they actually held steady. They did not raise rates this week. But next month, at the end of April, they're going to have to make another decision. If they start to raise rates, and the thing is, they don't have to incrementally raise rates. First off, you can have major emergency rate hikes. Okay, you could just have it happen before that meeting. Or You could wait it out to the end of that month, and you could also just make it to where it's not just a quarter of a basis point anymore. You can make it a 50 basis point or a full percentage point move in the interest rate. That can also happen, right? And if that happens, once again, you've got these people that have borrowed all this money. They're going to have to start to react. They're going to have to start collapsing these positions. And this could have a massive impact on the United States bond market and the United States stock market. And if that happens at the same time, if you have both bonds and stocks falling at the same time, you're going to see some really problematic issues in the United States. And right now, just as a sign of what may be coming here, we're seeing the break-even rates and the U.S. Treasury yields already rising. Okay, we already had a massive spike just here on Friday alone. We had the 30-year yield go from 4.85% to 4.95%. Okay. That's a pretty big move in a one-day trade, right? So in general, we're seeing the 30-year continuing to price upward. We're seeing this trend here, okay, from the lows back here of, well, this is just March this year, but if we really look back even further, right, we've got this almost secular trend of yields going higher, okay? This goes back to especially from 2020. Right, when yields went almost to exactly zero as the United States Fed dropped short-term interest rates to zero, you saw the long-term rate almost go down to zero as well. But ever since then, you've seen this rising interest rate, even as right, the U.S. has started to lower the short-term interest rate. You still are not seeing the market react by having lower long-term rates. And now what this means here, by the way, to be clear, is there's basically, you can look at this as selling pressure on yields. Yields rise, selling pressure on the bonds, on the 30-year bond. People are selling the 30-year bond and the yield for that 30-year bond is rising. Okay. So this is almost a sign, right? The fact that we're continuing to see this 30-year rise throughout this situation, even though the Fed might be, they should be dropping rates, right? Well, no, this is basically saying that that inflation is likely to continue to tick higher and that rates are likely to stay higher for longer, or potentially to even go up. Okay. So just wanted to point this out because this is a massive thing here. If you keep seeing these yields go up, this means that investors are selling off bonds. And what are they buying is the real question at this point, because they're not buying stock market assets. Okay. We saw gold throughout that same time frame, right? Making massive moves from the bottoms over here in 2020 and whatnot. 2022, you had a massive bottoming in gold, and it's just rocketed off since then. You've got countries around the world moving away from U.S. treasuries and buying up gold and silver. We see that on record. We see central banks buying up gold and getting rid of U.S. dollars. So just wanted to point out what some of the other pieces of this could look like as this continues on. Gold is coming off right now, right? Gold is coming down. But if we keep on seeing treasury sell off, if we start to see stocks sell off, okay, still haven't really seen a meaningful move in the stock market, guys. It's just slowly bleeding. I'm preparing for this to make a different kind of a move. So in general, I'm finding ways to get long oil. I'm finding ways to get short the market. Now, personally, this is just something that I'm doing. Not recommending that anyone do it. Inside of the channel members, I'm breaking down exactly how I'm doing these things. So if you want to become a channel member, the macro analyst tier members get access to those exclusive videos where I talk about exactly how I'm positioning and the specific things that I'm doing even in my personal life to be prepared for all of this. Feel free to join that. But in general, this complacency that we've seen in the stock market in the US is not going to last forever. Not at all. Not at all. There's going to be a reaction. People are going to catch up to what's happening. So let me see. So the final thing that I wanted to run through here is that I personally, guys, have been continually preparing for there to be some sort of an excuse, there to be some sort of a reason why we end up moving into a world with central bank digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, and everything that's attached with it, right? So I will continue, in my mind, to be prepared for that by just continuing to dollar cost average into my assets. okay, into my crypto assets that I think are aligned with that future. We're seeing a reworking of how the Middle East works. We're seeing companies that have gone very deep into that situation with what's happening in the Middle East and preparing and building rails, financial rails in the Middle East. Now, with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and break out into the Q&A section. There's a couple of things that I got to share with you guys as we do that. As I said, I'm dollar cost averaging. I'm continuing to diversify the places where I'm buying and holding assets, even on the equity side of things, guys. I'm doing that same thing on the equity side. I'm looking at who are the trusted brokers? Who can I put positions out there with? Spreading things out, because who knows what is about to happen here. But as I've mentioned earlier in the stream, guys, I just partnered up with Caleb and Brown. They are a crypto brokerage in particular. The best thing about them is that you can actually get on the phone with an actual broker and talk to them about your crypto questions, your needs, thinking about buying and selling, and so on and so forth. So check them out, guys. There's a link to sign up for a free account with them in the description down below. When you do that as well, make sure that you verify your account, because otherwise you won't have all of the functionality of the account. You always want to be able to put money on and take it off. You always want to be able to take money off. So verify your account, verify your information. Okay. But I'm super excited for this partnership with them. They've treated me well. They treat people that I have brought to them well. You can even hop on the phone with Jim, who is my contact over at Caleb and Brown. His email is in the description of this video, jim.bazzani@calebandbrown.com. Reach out to him if you have any questions, anything about the services. Just reach out to him. He'll help you get set up and get you in touch with the broker as quickly as possible. These guys have taken the time to create a smoother pipeline for anyone who is coming into my ecosystem. As I've mentioned in the past, I can't talk to everyone. I can't help everyone right one-on-one with all of their crypto questions and how to get involved and whatnot. But Caleb and Brown can actually do that. Their business is set up for that. So definitely check them out. Click the link in the description to join them there, as well as we have Robbie J. Davis. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. Putting the link in the description, and I'll put the link, in the chat as well. So with that said, let's talk. What do you guys got going on? I know you guys have been pretty active in here. Talk to me right now about what you're seeing out there in the world, for instance, what you're thinking about, how you are dealing with this, navigating with this, any questions that you guys may have as well. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. Yeah, so Spitfire Shine said, did I miss the lockdown portion of the conversation? Well, the whole conversation is really just about what's happening, how this is developing, why we might actually be having to deal with the lockdown, which is what's happening with the energy situation. And this is what is being told, is why we're probably going to have to deal with potential lockdowns, which is that there's a supply crunch on energy. And that's a legitimate problem, right? If you've blocked off 20% of the world's oil supply and natural gas, you're going to have problems. You're going to have a shortage of energy. And so the International Energy Agency is telling people to stay home, to stop taking unnecessary traveling. Don't fly. Little things, right? Just like that to preserve the energy that is going to have to be rationed. It's already being rationed in other parts of the world. It's already being rationed in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Australia, essentially. Right? We're already being told to go to school 3 days a week or go to work 2 days a week or whatever. The work days are shortening and schools are being shut down, or shortened. The weeks are being shortened, but that's just now. Okay, this is already in motion. And once again, guys, this just started. This just started less than a month ago. It hasn't even been a month. Hasn't even been a month. You've got supply destruction, not just supply shock, supply constraint. You've got not only the choke point of where the oil and gas can come out, you've got the actual facilities being destroyed. And that's only happening more and more by the day. And the actual war itself is heating up and ratcheting up. So, yeah, everyone who's new here, definitely hit that like button and subscribe. Appreciate you being here with us on a Saturday. Let's see what you guys are seeing around the world. What are you guys seeing out there in your local regions? Darren Bailey says, thank you for the super chat, first off. Keith, do you think there is a collision between gold price and Bitcoin? Could a lot of Dubai residents been holding gold and selling it to buy Bitcoin because it's easier to travel with? So, in general, right, a lot of the speculation around this conversation with gold has been that there's like this problem in the Middle East, and that is why, like people over there are essentially selling gold for liquidity, right? It's kind of one of the things that people are saying is happening, and that's probably a fair thing to think as the first initial reaction. And then the question was the collision between the price of gold and Bitcoin. So could you be selling gold to buy Bitcoin? For sure. I mean, absolutely. That could be something that could happen. I think that at scale, you probably don't see all the gold holders doing that. Gold being sold on the markets versus being sold in person as well is also a very different thing. The physical gold market versus like the futures and the paper markets is a very different thing, to be fair. So it's not that like I'm literally trying to not carry gold on this plane with me, and so I'm selling it so that I can buy Bitcoin. I don't think that's exactly what would be happening. But one thing I will say about that conversation in general is that it makes sense to have both, right? I think Andy Schechtman on Memes and Markets last week or 2 days ago was talking about why is there so much infighting between the communities. Let's actually watch a clip real quick from Memes and Markets. So if you guys haven't already, click the link in the description to go and subscribe to Memes and Markets, because we have some incredible guests over there, and there's just a lot of incredible conversations that we have, and we get to go live, and you guys get to ask questions to our guests and be a part of the chat. It's a really, really good time. So let's play a quick clip from this conversation that we had on Memes and Markets on Thursday.
We see the world in very similar ways, right? We see the problems.
This is about the Bitcoiners and the gold people. So let's talk about it real quick.
You said this is what turned you on to Bitcoin. I agree with you, right? We see the world, and I think the dumbest thing in the world is that we're divisive with one another and argumentative with one another. We, I think, have more in common than people think. You know, before you guys were born, I doubt you ever remember these commercials. There was a commercial for Reese's peanut butter cups, and there was two people walking down the street looking like this. One had a piece of chocolate in his hand. The other guy had a can of peanut butter or a jar of peanut butter for whatever reason. And they bump into each other. You got your peanut butter in my chocolate. You got your chocolate in my peanut butter. And they each take a bite like, wow, that's great. It's better. My point is that we're better together, not only in understanding the world and macroeconomics and the reasons to own things that are not dollar denominated. Your entire portfolio, I believe, is stronger, 1,000% stronger. I think we both look at the world and go in through the same door. One goes this way, one goes that way once you're inside the door. One wants to make money, one wants to preserve money. I'll give you an analogy. When my kids were young, there's another couple that we would frequently travel with. And this guy was great. He was an all-American wrestler, and he loved to gamble. And wherever we end up, we go on trips together. He and I somehow mysteriously ended up at a casino when everyone was asleep. And every single time I would gamble with him, I'm sitting there. I mean, he would drink me under the table with beer because big wrestler, and he thought it was funny to try and get me drunk. And I'd be like, listen, I'm not too buzzed to see that every time I walk out of here with you, you have a pocket full of money. How the hell are you doing this? I'm sitting at the table with you, and I don't see you doing that. And what you don't see is that every time I win a hand, I put a chip in my pocket. So when I leave the casino, I'm guaranteed to have money. And that's the same analogy, and that is that, you know, taking profit from one area and moving it to the other side in 6,000-7,000-year-old wealth that the most well-funded and well-informed traders on the planet, from the central banks who have been buying it not hand over fist for 5 years to now the biggest money in the United States, who knows where the puck is going, not only buying it but standing for delivery, tells you there's something bigger here. So why do they have to be mutually exclusive of one another? Why can't we better our position, better our understanding of what's happening across the globe, have a more well-rounded portfolio by combining the two? And so while I don't understand cryptocurrency quite the way that you guys do, I understand it in theory. I own a little bit. I speak at the XRP convention, and I'm not this year, but I know that's kind of heresy for people with Bitcoin. But I've done that specifically to unite the communities, to say, listen, we all understand the same stuff. Stop fighting with one another. We're better off as a community, as a portfolio, as understanding historical prices and monetary events and the whole 9 yards. And so I think that I'm glad that Bitcoin came about so people would understand this is a bigger problem. It's just a different chosen vehicle. But my real feeling is that having some of both makes your portfolio a hell of a lot stronger. Truly, I do.
Hey, you made it to the. So, incredible take here from Andy, and I see some more of the conversation happening in the description as well. Be sure, guys, to go and subscribe to Memes and Markets. The link is in the description. I see 2,000 people here live with me. If you're here live with me, you would absolutely love going live with us over there at Memes and Markets. It's so much fun, and we actually break down this stuff with real experts in real time. So hit that link in the description. Go and subscribe to Memes and Markets. 2,000 of you people here. If you care about anything that I have to say, you can hear me say it much more often and even more raw thoughts from me over there. That's where I'm dropping all my raw thoughts. You guys get to ask me some real juicy stuff over there that I don't even normally talk about. So go over there to Memes and Markets and get to know us a little bit, and also get this information as it comes. So point being here, gold and silver, gold and Bitcoin and silver, whatever, guys, like it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think that there's all of this infighting, there's all these problems for no reason. It's like someone said, oh, well, like it's not just being able to take this asset with you, it's also being able to use it when nothing else is working, right? So everyone goes, well, what about the EMP, or what if the internet goes down? Like technically the internet could go down, and there's systems that there's still apps that you can use with no internet connection that will allow you to settle Bitcoin offline or other cryptos offline. And that's not even the real question here. The real question is, it's not just that far. Let's take it one step closer to where what if just the banking system has an issue, right? What if just that happens first? That's another thing that you've got to keep in mind, and a reason to think about buying crypto and having crypto. And it's not about like people, we get so focused on the price of the asset, which the price of it does matter. But think about the price of the Bitcoin, for instance, when someone is in that situation where they're in the Middle East, where their bank account just went down, or the whole banking accounts of all of these people went down. If you need to send money from someone to another, the price of the Bitcoin in US dollars or whatever doesn't mean anything anymore. The only thing that really matters is like, can you even transact? Right? So then you start to see a different world. And if we see any events that force this conversation around these cryptos to become more and more of a thing, then you've also got to be super careful about being on the wrong side of this actually being a part of the entire plan, right? Of this actually being the whole point of all of these things that potentially are going on, is to actually push people toward this digital financial world. Could it be that you're going to see people being bribed to take this money the same way that we saw in 2020 when we saw the handouts? Here's your stimulus check, right? Could we end up seeing a situation like that, but with stable coins or with other crypto or whatever, right? For sure, we're seeing a reworking of the global order. For sure, we're seeing a reworking of the payment systems around the world. The question is, are we positioned for these types of things to play a role in that or not? So you guys know where I say to go and make sure that you are, which is over here at Caleb and Brown. Click that link in the description, set up a free account. It's a free account. Verify your account, talk to Jim, he'll get you set up, and you will get in touch with an actual broker who can walk you through some of this stuff. So that is my piece on that. But I'm sitting here, I'm watching the chat. Let's see, guys. Can crypto work without electricity? It's like, technically, you cannot. If you had zero electricity, you'd have a real problem, right? So, but this all comes down to like the layers of things. And once again, it's just like, there's no, you're like, does gold work without, can you use gold when only digital systems are helpful? Can you use gold when everyone's in lockdown, and if you leave your house, you'll get, arrested? You see what I'm saying? Like we can take both extremes, and we can realize that we want to have optionality across every extreme. Hopefully that made sense. Okay. I'm watching the chat here. How does Judy Shelton's proposal for gold-backed bonds play into the current events going on, says Lorenzo Ward. So on that episode with Andy Schechtman, Andy actually brought up Judy Shelton's gold-backed bond scenario, which I thought was awesome. I know a lot of you guys are familiar with Judy Shelton. She was a former economic advisor to Trump, as well as a she was not confirmed to become the Fed chair during Trump's first term. And she's written a book about basically creating a gold-backed standard. And she believes, apparently, that if you go watch that episode with Andy, she fully says that Trump is going to back the dollar with gold and releasing these gold-backed bonds. And so what that means, as far as how that ties into current events, I think it's a fascinating concept. Oh man, I gotta play the clip, man. It's just so awesome. I've played her clip about that a couple of times on my channel. Let me see which one it was. But in general, right, this idea of gold-backed bonds, gold-backed U.S. currency is something that I think would make sense with, let me see if I can find this clip. How does that play into everything that's happening right now? It's a really tough thing to kind of just make a pure speculation on. But what I will say is that we've seen gold being bought up by all of these other countries, right? And we've seen gold continue to go on this massive run, right, throughout all of this. And as that is occurring, right, we can only speculate that as they're doing that, they're also dropping the dollar. And as they're dropping the dollar, where are they going? They're going into this gold-backed, they're going into gold. And there's a lot of whispers around going into a gold-backed system on their own. So if the U.S. is to skate ahead, right, if they're to skate ahead of the puck and say, wait a minute, if everybody else is going gold, then we might want to actually back our currency with gold before everyone else tries to create this new system around it. Or really, we just kind of do it as they're doing it, right? So Judy Shelton has been very open about this idea of a gold-backed bond. Let's also hear what she said about this. This was many years ago, okay? But I talk about this in one of my older videos. The secret plan to use crypto to save the U.S. dollars was back in September last year. And well, in general, she's been talking about this for years. And let's hear what she kind of said here.
Brought up how his previous appointee, who never got confirmed, Judy Shelton, is a huge proponent of a gold-backed currency. But what Clear Value Tax did not mention, and maybe this was on purpose, was this.
Would returning to a gold standard help the U.S. economy? Can you talk a little about your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say I don't see it so much as returning, but more of a back to the future. I like the idea of a gold standard. I mean, it could be used in a very cryptocurrency way. The point is, do you have a unified money system so that when you talk about the international marketplace, everyone is playing on a level monetary playing field?
Just some food for thought there.
It's so funny to see how the channel has evolved. But yeah, so hopefully that answered that question a little bit, Lorenzo. But in reality, it's hard to know exactly how it's all going to play out. But I thought that statement in particular was very striking. I mean, we all saw it in the XRP. Anyone who's in the XRP space saw that clip at that time. And it was like, whoa, what does she mean by this? This was something that she said. In a cryptocurrency kind of way, moving to a gold standard. I wonder what that would look like. Tojo Creation said, at what point does the global economy collapse? $150 oil, $200 oil? I mean, those types of numbers sustained, price levels sustained at those types of levels will create huge issues, for sure. Peace out, Howie D deals 3580. I do hear that, absolutely. Peter Workin said lockdowns for what? That's so interesting. I guess it's so wild because this is all over my feed, right? It's all over my feed about this concept of there being these like energy lockdowns. And I'm guessing a lot of people are like, what are you even talking about? But as I've continued to say, there's a big problem with what's happening with the energy supply around the world that's being constrained. And when that happens, you're going to have reactions to that. Something is going to happen. Like something is going to happen. And governments are saying, instead of there being literal shortages and there being lines out the wazoo, shelves that are empty, we need to get demand to slow down. We need to kill demand faster than the price of oil can continue to shoot up like that, because otherwise people are going to panic, and people are already probably going to panic, right? So this is why you're seeing this potential for these lockdowns, is that you've got to pull back demand. You've got to keep people from going out and buying at the same rates, because otherwise you're going to run out of stuff and prices are going to shoot up way faster and higher than they otherwise would. You've got to find a way to kill demand, so you implement a lockdown or a slowdown, which at some point, if things don't get better, will turn into a lockdown. All right. Yeah, all over your feed as well. Yeah, I'm sure that, a nice amount of us here are seeing this, right? And just seeing what the International Energy Agency themselves are saying. Oh, that's interesting. I feel like I should address that because it's a huge compliment, even though it's yeah, I don't know what I did. So Samui's son, 6684, said that I'm smart and whatever. No doubt he is compromised people. Well, I'm not compromised yet. I will tell you right now. Hopefully, in no way will I ever be compromised. I'll do my best to give you guys obvious hints, if so. maybe if I stop saying my line about the walking in his park talking to a stick. One time I literally just forgot it, and you guys were like, what's going on? But no, I don't think I'm compromised. I don't think so. Kind of just doing my thing. That's why I love memes and markets so much too, because over there I also have so much less pressure to kind of perform in a way. Like there's no real expectation over there. It's just come vibe, come like almost monitor the situation with us in everything that's going on, and all the cool people that we have on as guests as well. Let me see here. I'll hang out for a couple more minutes. Any questions you guys have, let me know. What are some good assets? OD Israel said, what are some good assets to get to protect cash and grow wealth besides gold and silver? Well, I think right now, a lot of the thing to keep in mind as well is the best way to protect cash. If you want to protect cash, and you just have cash, right? So that's a different question than protecting your wealth, right? The biggest thing that I would do, right, if I had some massive stock portfolio, is I would consider buying protection on it right now before the protection on that gets super duper expensive. Although we did just see the MOVE index shoot up like crazy on Friday. Let me give you guys the sort of definition of the MOVE index. So the MOVE index is the Merrill Lynch option volatility estimate, which measures U.S. Treasury market volatility, acting as a VIX for bonds by tracking yield uncertainty. It gauges investor expectations of interest rate fluctuations, serving as a key indicator of fixed income market fear. A higher MOVE index implies greater volatility and market instability, specifically for the bond market. Let me show you guys really quickly what happened over there. Okay, just on Friday, we had a massive upward move in the MOVE index, no pun intended, on Friday. Okay. So, we've seen higher levels in the past, don't get me wrong, but to see it move that fast at one time, right, is something that you got to keep in mind is not a good look. And this is specifically for the bond market. Now, I said that because if you see something like that happen with the VIX, then buying protection on stock markets, when I'm saying that, I'm saying buying options is going to get really expensive, because the way that options are priced, implied volatility is a major piece of how options are priced. So when the VIX shoots up, when implied volatility goes up, the price of options skyrockets. And so trying to buy a put becomes super expensive, when really at a time when, once again, we've been talking about all of this complacency that's happening in the market, you could be buying puts or could have bought a put just as protection. Just a little bit of insurance on there being a massive retracement in these markets. And eventually you're going to see the VIX spike. You're going to see the market come down, potentially, right? Potentially that's what we see. And then you can't buy protection at such a good rate. If you buy protection at that point, now you're kind of on the other side of the trade where you bought this protection, but is it even going to go any further down than it already is? And you've now paid this massive premium for that protection. So just something to hopefully also illustrate and teach a little bit of how markets work, options work. And the MOVE index in the bond market is something also totally different, but it's like, it's the VIX for bonds. And if you're seeing volatility in the bond market, like you've got a massive issue, right? So let's see here. Exile said, what are you talking about? I never had a lockdown. So that again, piece doesn't work for you. Heard on that. Okay, so SPB 1179 said, can you explain the train of thought that oil and gold aren't going the same way? So that indicates the market predicts an end to the conflict, right? So oil is spiking, but gold is coming down, right? I don't think it's that simple, right? I really don't. I think you have to consider two things. Gold has been on a generational run over the past year. Right? So gold has room to take a pullback, period. Whatever the catalyst was going to be, you had room for a pullback in gold, 20 to 30% pullback in gold. No doubt about that. So just because this war has started and you see gold come back does not mean that that's going to be the trend of gold throughout the rest of the conflict. What I've learned, and I'm sure you guys know this as well to some degree, is that whenever you get a reaction to the headline, that's usually not the time to do the thing. That's why I've talked to my channel members, for anybody who's an exclusive a macro analyst tier member, I talked about, I didn't like start doing stuff about oil as soon as we knew that the price was going to go up. Because what happened immediately after price went up on oil when it opened up at $120 on Sunday night, it immediately retraced that entire range back down to $90, right? And like, you know what I'm saying? That's what's going to happen when you get that first initial reaction. That's what happens. But guess what? Oil is back on the way back up again. Right. So you have to keep in mind that these initial reactions in markets are essentially manipulations. Okay. And that is something that we have to keep in mind about what's happening with the price of gold at the moment. I don't think that you're going to see like, oh, gold is just going to be done from this point forward. I don't think so at all. What else you guys got for? There's 2,000 people in here. That's incredible. I really find that to be fascinating. Thank you guys for doing that. Hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. I wasn't expecting so many of you guys to pull up. People are getting mad about the title, but at the end of the day, this is what brought people in the door. We got 2,100 people in here. We haven't had a stream like that in quite some time. So that means that there's something's going on that's making you guys want to click and come and hang out. So I appreciate that massively. And my point is that I'm doing my best to communicate what's going on, for one, and what I think is important and why you should be around. So hopefully that's met your expectations as you've been hanging out here, because 2,100 of you here after 2 hours. So I'm super, super grateful for you, is what I'm really saying. Appreciate you. My birds. Yeah, guys, like there's so much cool stuff that you guys miss out on if you don't come to Memes and Markets. Thomas Wilson said, am I talking about my birds? I'm not going to talk about my birds today, but I remember, Thomas, if I'm not forgetting, you've had a pet rat, if I'm not confusing you with someone else in the chat at the time. Let me know. So yeah, guys, welcome to this entire space. For anyone who's new, hit that like button and subscribe. But other than that, I'll take a couple more minutes to read the comments and then we'll call it a day. Exile365 said major car companies already have back orders huge for the solid state batteries in the new vehicles. That's going to drive it up who knows how much, 150, 250. huge for the solid state batteries. There's already backups. Gotcha. King Mag said, why would we have lockdowns again? I'll say it at least one more time before I end. We have an energy supply problem. And so people or governments are starting to tell people to pull back on their consumption of energy. And what that looks like is essentially the same thing as a lockdown. Okay, a different reason, but the same concept of stay at home. Higher treasury yields means more interest on the US debt, which is already out of control. Exactly. Like higher long-term yields is the absolute worst case scenario right now for what this administration is supposedly trying to accomplish, which is to bring long-term yields down. So much work has been done to try to get long-term yields to come down. They tried to, take all of the spending out, right, to try to improve the debt to GDP ratio. They've tried to get the Fed to lower interest rates at all costs, firing people from the Fed board, launching investigations of multiple people on the Fed board. Like crazy things have been trying to be done to try to get the situation in hand with long-term yields. And at the same time, guess what? You start a war like this, you had to anticipate that they would at least try to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. They shut down the Strait of Hormuz, huge supply shock to oil. Oil goes through the roof. Everything goes up. Prices are going to go crazy. Inflation expectations rise, and so do the long-term yields on the fact that they're expecting higher long-term inflation. Like, come on, man. No way you get long-term interest rates lower. And then you're going to lower rates now? If you lower rates now, you're going to have a massive problem. So basically, if you lower rates in a situation where inflation expectations are rising, you're going to get an even higher long-term interest rate because now bond traders, the bond vigilantes you call them, are going to expect even higher inflation because now you're trying to ease the economy into a rising inflation time. Like, oof. Yeah, not the best situation. So basically what I'm learning, Trippy David said, have never seen you live before. Welcome to the live stream. Hit that like button. Bill K said, now I must leave. Yeah, I appreciate you, Bill. I appreciate you sticking around. Thank you, Whistle Tone. I appreciate Whistle Tone said, don't care about the title. I came back because the content is good. That's awesome. The truth of the matter is that the title ends up determining whether or not YouTube's actually going to recommend it to you. Maybe you don't care, which is, just so you guys know, right? Because I'm here, guys. I'm on YouTube. I'm trying to do the YouTube thing, and I'm trying to also reach people with this information. So my goal is to reach people with the information, right? So my job has to be about how do I do that? And the game that I got to play is get people to pay attention to click, because once one person clicks, YouTube recommends it to the next person and then the next person. And even if you guys love me, what I've noticed is that my videos won't get recommended to you if people aren't clicking on them, right? And watching them, to be clear. YouTube doesn't just recommend your video just because someone clicks, right? It's also because you watched and you thought that this was the right thing to click on. You are satisfied with that click to some degree. I don't know their whole entire algorithm, but that's what they tell us that they're trying to do. So yeah, Thomas. So that was you. Oh, man. I appreciate you, Mr. Arthur KF. I really appreciate that. We had a tweet that's getting some love right now as well. If you guys don't follow me on Twitter, that'd be super appreciated. That link is usually at the bottom of the description as well. You guys can find my Twitter. It was an older clip from talking about the Clarity Act, but I am at Interoperator on Twitter, so you guys can find me over there. Good evenings, crypto. Mr. Abs gave me a nice requote today. Wow, that tweet of his is doing good too. Shout out to Abs. We really appreciate you, for real, man. So that's my Twitter. If you click on the Yeah, at the very bottom. It actually doesn't even have it there. That's frustrating. Well, that's me on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, give me a follow. I appreciate you. All right, guys. Happy Saturday to you. I really appreciate it. Johnny Rax, do I think the housing market will crash? I like the way you reframed your question because the first one I wasn't going to answer. I think it also depends. Well, that's going to depend on where you're at, depend on where you're at in the world as well. All that. So definitely can't say for sure. I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. I have no idea. But I do appreciate you rephrasing the question. Kelly White said watching today's stream was a good break from reading the books off your list. Wow, that's super cool, Kelly. That's super cool, Kelly White. Yeah, inside the members videos, I have one that's about the books that I recommend. And gosh, you guys, if you guys have book suggestions for me, always bring them to me as well. I've finally been getting back to reading after having taken a massive hiatus. It was crazy. Last year, I was reading like a madman. And then this channel took off and I was like, oh, snap, I need to like figure this out real quick. And now I'm finally finding some peace to be able to read more. And actual books, that is. So appreciate you guys for being around for all of that. And I need some new book recommendations, no doubt. I love you too, Chris. I love all you guys for supporting this and continue to stick around. I love you even more if you subscribe to Memes and Markets. We're not dependent on any of that. All right. All right. Appreciate you guys. This is the 2-hour mark. Definitely. It's funny. I always come into these. I'm like, oh, well, I don't know if I have enough material. I'll go on for an hour or something, 30 minutes even. And it's been consistently hitting 2 hours long, which, I just appreciate you guys. And today you guys really showed up. So I'm going to have to figure out how to be more creative with the titles that you guys pull up, because I know that's a big part of it. Plus, there's just, this situation is happening, right? So I know that that's another thing. But yeah, every Saturday we're doing these streams. So if you're here, just know that we're here every Saturday doing this. The time might change every once in a while. So far, we've been using the same exact time, which is 2 p.m. Eastern. So pull up, and then Memes and Markets every Tuesday and Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern. All right, folks. Yep. Dr. Denise MD said I shared your link with my mastermind. Wow, that's super cool. Dr. Denise MD, I appreciate you. Really do. Really do. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. Guys, turn on notifications. Turn on the notifications for when I go live. That way, when you hit the subscribe button and stuff, hit that notification bell, turn on the notifications for my live so that you guys can pull up. That's another thing that's super helpful. All right. All right. Appreciate you guys. Have an incredible rest of your Saturday. I feel crazy leaving you guys hanging at 1,500. Wow. You guys showed up today. I appreciate you. Hit that like button, subscribe. And by the way, if you haven't already, be sure to create a free account with Caleb and Brown if you're interested at all in buying any crypto. Those guys will take care of you. You can get on the phone with an actual broker and talk about how that situation is going, talk about thinking about all that. We've partnered up, so they're going to know that if you come in and you mention my name in any way, they'll know you're coming in from my channel, and they will treat you well and also just make sure that you get taken care of quickly. And if you haven't, if you're unsure of whether or not this is something you want to do, if you have extra questions, Jim, my contact over at Caleb and Brown, his email is in the description, so you can actually go ahead and reach out to him, and he will also walk you through everything and get you set up on the platform. But other than that, guys, it's Keith D. I'm here to talk everything money and markets. Until next time, my lovely people, make today the best day of your life. Don't let this stuff get to your head too much. Don't let it bring you down too much. I know this is a lot of heavy, dark, deep stuff, but really it's just being prepared and then letting go of anything that you cannot control.